I'm going to make you regret ever picking up that phone. These were the last words Shanice Williams heard before her Instagram obsession turned into her death sentence. In a small Arizona home just miles from the Mexican border, a young mother's body lay motionless on the bedroom floor while her killer methodically deleted every trace of her social media existence. No one knew what had happened. No one knew how quickly it had escalated. And the killer believed no one would ever understand why. Welcome to Silent Crime Witness. Thank you for joining us today. If you're new here, we truly appreciate you taking the time to watch. Please hit that subscribe button to support our channel as we bring these important stories to light, and comment your location below so we can see where our community is watching from around the world. Today, we dive into the dark reality of domestic control in the digital age, where the line between online freedom and offline danger can disappear with a single status update. The internet has transformed how we connect. Social media promises instant validation at our fingertips. But as you're about to discover, sometimes the person most threatened by your online life is sleeping right beside you. February 12, 2022. A cold winter night in Copper Springs, Arizona. Darius Washington paced the living room floor, scrolling through his girlfriend's Instagram account for the 100th time that day. The children were finally asleep and the house was quiet except for the sound of his heavy breathing and the occasional ping from his phone. Single and ready for whatever comes next, Shanice's latest post read, accompanied by a selfie where she smiled more freely than she had in years. The 32-year-old construction worker threw his phone against the wall, shattering its screen. For 13 years, he had controlled every aspect of Shanice Williams's life. Now, at 27, she was slipping away from him, one post at a time. What Darius couldn't know, was that Shanice's digital rebellion wasn't about finding another man. It was about finding herself. Social media creates a unique paradox in abusive relationships, explained Detective Tasha Brown, who would later lead the investigation. It simultaneously offers victims a lifeline to the outside world while potentially escalating the danger they face at home. At 11:37 p.m., neighbors heard shouting from the Washington Williams household. The couple's arguments had become increasingly common in recent months, but this one sounded different, more desperate, more dangerous. Inside the modest three-bedroom home, Shanice stood her ground for perhaps the first time in their relationship. "I'm done hiding," she told Darius, clutching her phone to her chest like a shield. "I'm not a child anymore." Those words, a declaration of independence from a woman who had been controlled since she was 14 years old, would be among her last. The timing of this murder reveals a pattern we see repeatedly in domestic homicides, explained Dr. Kimberly Jackson, a criminologist specializing in intimate partner violence. The most dangerous moment for a victim is when they assert their independence, when the abuser realizes their control is slipping away. Darius's response to Shanice's defiance was swift and brutal. According to his later confession, he first attempted to grab her phone, then struck her repeatedly when she resisted. As Shanice fell to the floor, Darius straddled her chest and placed his hands around her neck. "I just wanted her to listen," he told investigators with chilling detachment. "I just wanted her to stop with the phone and pay attention to me." The medical examiner determined that Shanice fought desperately for her life. Defensive wounds on her arms showed she had tried to push Darius away, and her broken nails indicated she had clawed at his hands as he tightened his grip around her throat. But after 13 years of emotional and physical abuse, Shanice's body was no match for Darius's rage. Within minutes, she was gone. Another victim of what experts now recognize as digital domestic abuse. "What makes this case so disturbing is how preventable it was," said prosecutor Latoya Robinson. "There were digital breadcrumbs of escalating control and isolation for years before the murder. We just don't have systems in place to recognize these warning signs." For the next 6 hours, Darius sat beside Shanice's body, methodically erasing her digital existence. He deleted her Instagram and TikTok accounts, removed her email accounts from her phone, and messaged her friends using her identity to say she was taking a break from social media. He was trying to erase the very thing that had given her a voice, Detective Brown explained. In his mind, if he could delete her digital self, he could somehow justify what he'd done to her physical self. But who was Shanice Williams, really? Born in 1995 to immigrant parents who had settled in Copper Springs during the mining boom of the 1980s, Shanice Marie Williams was a bright, vivacious child with dreams bigger than her small border town could contain. Her father, Marcus, worked tirelessly in the copper mines, while her mother, Keisha, cleaned houses for the mine executives and their families. Shanice was always drawing or writing stories, recalled her elementary school teacher, Tamika Freeman. She had this incredible imagination and such determination. When she set her mind to something, nothing could stop her. The Williams family lived in a modest two-bedroom home on the south side of Copper Springs, an area predominantly populated by immigrant families. Despite their limited resources, Marcus and Keisha prioritized education, determined that their only daughter would have opportunities they never had. They saved every penny for her future, said Keisha's sister, Aunt Latanya. Marcus would work double shifts in the mines, coming home with his lungs full of dust just to put money aside for Shanice's college fund. Shanice excelled academically, consistently earning top grades and participating in every extracurricular activity available. By age 12, she was already talking about becoming a doctor or lawyer, professions that would allow her to help others while securing financial stability for her family. She was so focused, remembered her middle school counselor, Jamal Thompson. Most kids that age can barely think past the weekend, but Shanice had her whole life mapped out. She was going to be the first in her family to go to college. But Shanice's carefully planned future began to unravel during the summer before her freshman year of high school when she met Darius Washington at the annual Copper Springs Carnival. Darius Washington's childhood stood in stark contrast to Shanice's. Born to a teenage mother who struggled with addiction and a father who disappeared before his birth, Darius had been shuffled between relatives and foster homes throughout his early years. Darius never had stability, explained his former social worker, Shonda Harris. By the time he was 10, he'd lived in 7 different homes. That kind of disruption leaves deep scars on a child's psyche. School was a particular challenge for Darius, who struggled with undiagnosed learning disabilities and behavioral issues. Teachers described him as intelligent but defiant, quick to anger when frustrated by academic challenges. He could have been successful with the right support, said his high school principal, Dr. Terrence Howard. But the system failed him repeatedly. By the time he reached high school, he'd given up on education entirely. At 16, Darius dropped out of school and began working construction jobs where his physical strength and willingness to take risks made him valuable despite his lack of formal education. He developed a reputation as a hard worker who could be counted on for the most dangerous tasks, scaling scaffolding without safety equipment, handling hazardous materials without proper protection. He was fearless, recalled former coworker DeAndre Jackson. Or maybe he just didn't care if he got hurt. Either way, he'd do jobs no one else would touch. This reckless courage earned Darius the respect of older workers and a higher wage than most teenagers could command. Suddenly flush with cash and free from adult supervision, he began frequenting local bars using a fake ID, developing a taste for whiskey and the power that came from being perceived as older than his years. By 19, Darius had his own apartment, a motorcycle, and a growing collection of tattoos that chronicled his personal philosophy: trust no one. Across his knuckles, pain is power; along his forearm, and most tellingly, what's mine stays mine. Across his chest, those tattoos were like a warning label, said Detective Brown. He was literally wearing his controlling nature on his skin, but no one recognized the red flags. It was this Darius Washington, 19 years old, financially independent and dangerously charming, who spotted 14-year-old Shanice Williams at the Copper Springs Carnival in the summer of 2009. Shanice, still wearing her hair in the braids her mother had carefully plaited that morning, was helping at her church's fundraising booth, selling homemade tamales and horchata. Darius, already 3 beers into the evening, was immediately drawn to her innocent beauty and obvious intelligence. He later told a cellmate that he knew Shanice was different from other girls, Detective Brown revealed. He said she wasn't trashy, like the girls he usually dated. He wanted something pure that he could make his own. For Shanice, Darius represented everything exciting and forbidden in her sheltered life. His motorcycle, his tattoos, his adult freedom. All were intoxicating to a girl whose parents monitored her every move and expected straight A's. It's a classic predatory pattern, explained Dr. Aisha Carter, a psychologist specializing in adolescent relationships. An older male targets a younger female precisely because of her inexperience. The age gap ensures a power imbalance that makes control easier to establish and maintain. Despite the concerns of Shanice's parents, who immediately recognized the danger Darius posed to their daughter's future, the relationship progressed with alarming speed. Shanice began sneaking out at night to meet Darius, lying to her parents about her whereabouts, and gradually withdrawing from the academic pursuits that had once defined her. "We saw her grades slipping first," said Ms. Freeman, who had remained a mentor to Shanice. "Then she dropped out of debate club, then student council. It was like watching a light being dimmed one switch at a time." Marcus and Keisha tried everything to separate their daughter from Darius, grounding her, confiscating her phone, even threatening to send her to live with relatives. But their efforts only pushed Shanice further into Darius's arms. "The more they tried to control her, the more she rebelled," explained Dr. Carter. "It's a normal adolescent response, but in this case it had tragic consequences. She was running from one form of control directly into another, far more dangerous one." The situation reached a crisis point when Shanice, just 15 years old, discovered she was pregnant. Terrified of her parents' reaction and convinced that Darius was her only ally, she agreed to his suggestion that they move in together. "He presented it as the adult solution," said Monique Davis, Shanice's cousin and confidant. "He told her they would be a family, that he would take care of her and the baby. What he really wanted was to get her away from anyone who might question his control." Faced with their daughter's pregnancy and determination to stay with Darius, Marcus and Keisha made the painful decision to allow the relationship rather than lose Shanice entirely. Darius moved into the Williams family home, an arrangement that was supposed to be temporary but stretched into years. "It was the hardest decision of their lives," said Aunt Latanya. "But they thought at least this way they could protect Shanice, keep her in school, make sure she and the baby were safe. They didn't realize they were letting the wolf into their home." The birth of their first child, a son they named Marcus after Shanice's father, seemed to temporarily stabilize the situation. Darius secured steady construction work, Shanice completed her GED, and the young family established a routine that, from the outside, appeared functional if not ideal. But behind closed doors, Darius's controlling behavior was intensifying. He monitored Shanice's phone calls, chose her clothes, and gradually isolated her from friends who might have offered perspective on the increasingly unhealthy relationship. "He would check her phone constantly," recalled Monique. "If a male name appeared in her contacts, even a teacher or a doctor, he would demand to know who it was and why she was talking to them. Eventually, it was easier for her to just not have any male contacts at all." Financial control soon followed. Though Shanice worked part-time at a local daycare center while studying for her GED, Darius insisted that all her earnings go into an account he managed. He gave her an allowance for household expenses but required receipts to prove how every dollar was spent. Economic abuse is often overlooked, but it's a powerful method of control, explained domestic violence counselor Ebony Taylor. "When you control someone's access to money, you control their ability to leave." By the time Shanice was 18, she had given birth to their second child, a daughter named Aaliyah. Her dreams of college had been indefinitely postponed, and her world had shrunk to the boundaries of their small apartment and the daycare where she worked. She would sometimes talk about taking classes at the community college, said her coworker at the daycare, Tiana Roberts. But whenever she brought it up, she'd get this look on her face, like she was already hearing Darius's objections in her head. The pattern continued. Shanice would express interest in education or career advancement. Darius would object or sabotage her efforts, and soon after, Shanice would become pregnant again. By 23, she had given birth to their fourth child, another daughter they named Monique after Shanice's cousin. "He kept her pregnant," said Monique bluntly. "Every time she started talking about maybe taking a class or getting a better job, suddenly she was expecting again. It was like he was making sure she couldn't ever leave." With 4 children under the age of 8, Shanice's options seemed increasingly limited. The family moved into a small 3-bedroom house on the outskirts of Copper Springs, further isolating Shanice from her support network. Darius's construction work kept them financially afloat, but they were perpetually one paycheck away from disaster. That disaster arrived in November 2020 when Darius lost his job due to pandemic-related cutbacks in the construction industry. Suddenly, the family's already precarious finances collapsed entirely. For men whose identity is wrapped up in being the provider, job loss can trigger a profound crisis, explained Dr. Malik Wilson, a psychologist specializing in masculine identity. Add to that a partner who's forced to step up and become the breadwinner, and you have a perfect storm of threatened masculinity. With 4 children to feed and a mortgage payment looming, Shanice took a job at Desert Palms Assisted Living Facility, where her mother had worked for years. The 12-hour overnight shifts were grueling, but the pay was steady, and for the first time in her adult life, Shanice had her own income. "We saw a transformation in her," said coworker Jasmine Taylor. "She started so quiet, almost afraid to speak up. But within a few months, she was making friends, laughing, even talking about maybe taking some nursing classes eventually." As Shanice's world expanded, Darius's contracted. Unemployed and increasingly resentful, he spent his days at home with the children or drinking at local bars. The dynamic that had defined their relationship for over a decade was shifting, and Darius couldn't handle it. He'd call her constantly during her shifts, Jasmine recalled. Sometimes 10, 15 times a night. If she didn't answer immediately, he'd leave threatening voicemails. We could all see how scared she was to go home some mornings. It was during these long overnight shifts that Shanice discovered the escape that social media could provide. Between caring for residents, she would scroll through Instagram and TikTok, glimpsing lives so different from her own. Social media became her window to a world beyond Darius's control, explained Dr. Jackson. For someone who had been isolated since adolescence, these platforms offered a form of freedom she'd never experienced. Shanice began posting more frequently innocent photos of her children, selfies in her scrubs, inspirational quotes about growth and change. She connected with old school friends, joined groups for healthcare workers, and even started following accounts focused on financial independence for women. Her digital awakening paralleled her growing independence in the real world, noted Detective Brown. As she earned her own money and built new relationships at work, she began to see possibilities beyond her controlled existence with Darius. For Darius, Shanice's social media use became an obsession. He would check her phone whenever she was in the shower, demand her passwords, and fly into rages if she changed them. He told friends he was convinced she was talking to other men, said Detective Brown. But our investigation found no evidence of any romantic communications. What she was doing was much more threatening to him. She was discovering her own voice. The situation reached a breaking point in January 2022 when Darius, drunk and enraged about Shanice's latest Instagram post, struck their oldest child who had tried to defend his mother. The 12-year-old boy suffered a split lip and bruised cheek. "That was her line in the sand," said Monique. "She told me, I can take whatever he does to me, but not the kids. Never the kids." The following day, Shanice opened a separate bank account and deposited half of her next paycheck. She began researching apartments and speaking with a domestic violence support group during her lunch breaks. And on February 2, 2022, she made the digital declaration that would ultimately cost her life, changing her relationship status to single. "It seems like such a small thing," reflected Detective Brown. "A few taps on a screen." But in the context of their relationship, it was revolutionary. She was publicly declaring her independence from a man who had controlled her since she was a child. Darius's reaction was immediate and terrifying. He smashed dishes, punched holes in walls, and threatened to take the children away where she would never find them. For 10 days, Shanice walked on eggshells, sleeping on the couch and making plans to leave when Darius was out with friends. She never got the chance. On the night of February 12th, Darius went through Shanice's phone while she showered and discovered she had been researching domestic violence shelters. When she emerged from the bathroom, he was waiting. The children later told investigators they were awakened by shouting but were too afraid to leave their rooms. The oldest boy reported hearing his mother cry out, "You don't own me anymore," followed by a loud thud and then silence. By the time police arrived the next morning, called by Shanice's mother when she failed to show up for their regular Sunday breakfast, Darius had fled. Shanice's body was found on the bedroom floor, her phone placed carefully beside her, wiped clean of data. Darius Washington was arrested 3 days later at a bus station in Phoenix, attempting to flee. In his possession was Shanice's journal, which detailed years of abuse and her recent plans to escape. The trial, which began in August 2022, revealed the full extent of Darius's controlling behavior over their 13-year relationship. Former friends testified about his jealousy, his monitoring of Shanice's whereabouts, and his frequent threats about what would happen if she ever tried to leave him. He told me once that if she ever left, he'd make sure no one else would want her, testified former co-worker Andre Thomas. The way he said it, so calm, so matter-of-fact, it chilled me to the bone. Darius's defense team attempted to portray Shanice's social media use as evidence of infidelity, arguing that he had been provoked by discovering her alleged affairs. A forensic analysis of her accounts revealed no romantic communications, only a woman gradually awakening to possibilities beyond her controlled existence. What the defense characterized as betrayal was actually self-discovery, prosecutor Robinson told the jury in her closing statement. Shanice Williams wasn't looking for another man. She was looking for herself, the self that had been suppressed since she was 14 years old. After just 4 hours of deliberation, the jury found Darius Washington guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. For Shanice's 4 children, now being raised by her parents, the legacy of their mother's digital awakening and tragic death is complex. The oldest, now 13, has become an advocate for teen dating violence awareness, speaking at local schools about recognizing the warning signs of controlling relationships. "My mom found her voice too late," he told a group of middle school students recently. "I want to make sure other kids hear her story before they make the same mistakes." Shanice's mother has established a foundation in her daughter's name, providing resources for young women in controlling relationships and raising awareness about digital domestic abuse. "The internet didn't kill my daughter," she said at the foundation's launch. "A man who couldn't stand to see her free killed my daughter. But if sharing her story helps even one young girl recognize the warning signs of control before it's too late, then Shanice's death will not have been in vain." For domestic violence experts, Shanice's case highlights the urgent need for better understanding of how digital technologies can both empower victims and escalate danger. "Social media can be a lifeline for isolated victims," explained Ebony Taylor. "But it can also trigger escalation when abusers see their control slipping away. We need to develop better safety planning that accounts for this digital dimension of abuse." The case has prompted some social media platforms to develop new safety features, including emergency settings that can instantly hide a user's activity from specific contacts and provide resources for those in danger. "Technology itself is neutral," noted Dr. Jackson. "The same platforms that can trap us in harmful comparison or expose us to abuse can also connect us to support, resources, and new possibilities. The key is ensuring that those experiencing abuse can access the benefits while minimizing the risks." For the residents of Copper Springs, Shanice's murder shattered illusions about the community's safety and forced many to confront uncomfortable truths about relationships they had long accepted as normal. "We all saw them together since she was a kid," admitted neighbor Denise Washington. "We all knew the age difference. We all heard the fighting. And none of us did anything. That's something this whole town has to live with now." Today, a small memorial garden stands outside the Desert Palms assisted living facility where Shanice worked. Planted by her co-workers, it features a bench with a simple plaque, "Shanice Williams, 1995 to 2022. She found her voice." Her Instagram account, recovered by investigators after the trial, remains as a digital memorial. Her final post, the one that so enraged Darius, now seems prophetic in its simple declaration of independence. "Single and ready for whatever comes next. Hashtag new beginnings, hashtag my choice, hashtag finding myself." Shanice Williams never got her new beginning, but her story serves as a powerful reminder of the complex intersection of technology, control, and violence in the modern age. One status update revealed her desire for freedom. One man's need for control ended her life. One family left to navigate the aftermath of a murder that technology didn't cause but may have accelerated. In the digital age, the most dangerous person in your life isn't the stranger lurking online. It's the person watching you scroll, monitoring your likes, and measuring your growing independence with mounting rage. If you found this story impactful, please consider supporting this channel by subscribing. Your subscription truly helps ensure these important stories continue to be told. Like this video if you want others to see it, and comment your location below so we can see where our community is watching from around the world. I'll be back tomorrow with another case that deserves to be examined in full. Until then, stay vigilant, stay safe, and remember, in the digital age, freedom can be as dangerous as it is necessary.